Thanks to our sponsors who provided lunch and all the meals, and for all the organizers and everybody. My name is Jessica Barras. I am faculty here in English and Ethnic Studies. I also lead some of our AI professional development. So I'm really honored to be one of the moderators, or the moderator for this panel. And I just want to give a brief kind of description of what this panel or what the session is going to be. And hopefully it'll be more of an organic conversation. So, quick description. As artificial intelligence continues to reshape education in the workforce, what critical questions should we be asking to prepare for the future? So this is a fireside chat, as you saw in the program, and our leading experts will explore the future state of AI and learning, examining the implications for faculty, institutional leaders, and industry partners. This panel is going to address the challenges and opportunities that AI presents, which I know all of the sessions have been doing. But considering how we can best integrate these technologies while maintaining educational integrity and equity. With the students, we are preparing for California's future workforce. So we invite you all to consider the future trajectory of AI and learning and to engage in a dialogue about the strategies and partnerships needed to navigate this rapidly changing landscape. So this session, as you can see, there's no slides. It's not necessarily a showcase of shiny new tools, but really it's a deeper conversation about the future of education and the ways that we can leverage partnerships across industry, the nonprofit sector, and higher education. So we're going to start by having the panelists give a brief introduction. And then I have some questions prepared, but we really want it to be more of an organic conversation, so we'll just kind of see where the initial questions take us. So I'll pass it over first to...
Hi, everyone. I am Kim Carson, and I have kind of a long and crazy career both in higher ed and industry, big tech, and now running my own nonprofit. And so started off in startups in the 90s, back when we were in our first boom. And then went to the UC system, where I actually was responsible for creating the databases that track a lot of our STEM matriculation throughout the state of California. Was picked up by a big tech firm to actually run the very first AI education tutor, so IBM Watson Education. I was the creator and founder of that interest startup. And that's from big data and analytics. So all of this has a trajectory, right? Like it doesn't just, AI didn't come from nowhere, it's been around for a very long time. And so we're talking about models and models ago, not the cool Gen AI models that you see today. And we were responsible for creating a tutor and then also a teacher companion for elementary teachers in Title I schools that enabled them to aggregate data about their students and then personalize their learning pathways. Now, any of you that know the economic scene in the state of California know that education doesn't make enough money for big tech to care. And so, even though I'm pretty sure I told them that when we went into it, I wound up taking another position with IBM where I was actually responsible for working with research and development in AI applications and then making use cases for them. And one of the craziest things that happened to me, I think, during the pandemic was I discovered that researchers were really good at making new tech and really bad at thinking about what is the social impact of these tools actually, what it can be, and where we can actually take it. So I left my big tech job and I started a nonprofit called Parallax Futures. And in that nonprofit, I actually work with non-technical founders, creators, artists, musicians, and help them co-create with AI in order to have applications for social good. And so that's me.
Hello, my name is Tara. I'm the Associate Director of Our Media. We are a nonprofit working to surface and empower the voice of Gen Z around the future of AI, specifically thinking about work and learning contexts. I actually joined the AI conversation because of my extreme pessimism about tech. My background is in the social sciences, and it was really the fears that I had about what was AI going to do to disrupt things like career pathways, opportunities, and potentially exacerbate the digital divide that led me to get involved. So the work that we're currently doing with Our Media is really focused on a few things. One, we're thinking about what can we do to expose young people. Right now we're focusing on college-age folks, but more broadly we're thinking about Gen Z as a whole. What can we do to expose them to opportunities, or sorry, to tangible applications of AI so that they have an opportunity to build some basic literacy and readiness around AI. And then through that work with them, drawing out insight into what are the pain points in their experience, what are the aspects of AI that they get really excited about, and following that, what do we need to then, third piece, partner with workforce development organizations, higher ed, and early employers to build out the kind of resources that would allow Gen Z to thrive in an AI-driven future. And then prior to my current role with Our Media, I got to do some research last year at UC Santa Barbara, kind of digging qualitatively into student and faculty uses and perspectives around ChatGPT. So I got to do some interviews with faculty and students, I got to host a couple focus groups, and I think the biggest takeaway that I had is that the conversations I was having with students and the conversations I was having with faculty didn't necessarily overlap. And so that was a big concern that's kind of motivated this push now to, center Gen Z in conversations about what AI might look like for learning and work, and then bridge those conversations with all of the wonderful work that all of you guys are doing.
Hi everyone, my name is Russell Wald, and I am the Deputy Director at Stanford's Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence, HAI or I, we respond to both. And it's one of Stanford's newer institutes, but we actually are celebrating our 5th year anniversary. And if you think about how long it takes to create something in academia, it's really almost, you could think of it as our 7-year anniversary. Because it takes 6 years, I do want to say that it's a personal privilege for me to be here because as a first generation to ever attend a college and starting off initially at Santa Monica College and a community college, I think it's really important that we are having these conversations in the community college environment. And what I will say just a second about HAI once again is that it is this important institute that is trying to help work across, have cross collaborations with external stakeholders outside of the university environment to really understand the impacts of this technology. And one important thing that I'll note here is I often hear from people, well, I'm not an AI expert. Because people come out of, look at this and they're a little bit concerned or they have these issues because they don't feel that they're properly steeped in this technology. But the truth of the matter is this is now a general purpose technology. And because it's a general purpose technology, it is one thing that's founded into our DNA is we are an interdisciplinary institute. And I have the privilege of weekly sitting with these brilliant minds in this space. One of my bosses is the godmother of AI. And I will hear from a lot of different people, but to me, I don't think there no longer is an AI expert anymore. The reason is because we're all in this together in this interdisciplinary field, and we're at these frontier levels of society figuring out what happens. So the computer scientist will say something in our weekly meeting, and the medical doctor that's part of our group will sit there and say, well, I think that might violate HIPAA laws. And then the law professor chimes in and says it's actually outright illegal. And what's really important for us to understand right now where we are in this moment is that we have to be understanding of all of these different perspectives and all of these different fields. And of course, one of those important fields is education and how are we teaching the next generation, taking advantage of the opportunity of where the technology can have high impact and make a difference. And I say this as my grandfather passed less than a year ago, well into his 90s, that a childhood accident left him to be illiterate to the end of his life. Today, I just can think of this moment of targeted tutors being able to meet him where he's at and being able to teach him specifically in a way that goes beyond the classroom and can actually help. And there's so much promise to this, but at the same time, there's social challenges that could come from this as well. The world does not work in a way of where everything is so easily tailored to us. we start to challenge our own resiliency because we were so tutored in such a way that now we are now challenged to function within society. So there's a lot of promise and opportunity, and I hope through this conversation that we can have a dialogue and understand what's going on, and I can hear from your perspectives as well. So thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Zach Sevelin. I am the Dean of the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Division, STEM, at Foothill College, sister school of De Anza College. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Computer science is housed under STEM at Foothill, hence it's very relevant to our conversations, but of course it's not specific to STEM. I've been in education for about 18 years, and prior to being in an administrative role as the Dean, I was a mathematics faculty member at Foothill College. Taught there for about 15 years before this, so I'm tenured there. So my background is math, but now I am seeing this topic of AI through a different lens, right? Through a higher looking lens, if you will. Under STEM at Foothill is also our Emerging Technologies Institute. We recently founded that within the past year and a half or so, and that program really looks to aim at giving students experiential learning in fields that are outside of the classroom. Special projects, we try to get students ideas and make them come to fruition, and of course, AI is one of those emerging technologies. There's a lot of chatter across the faculty, across the entire campus, right? Whether you're in the arts, or whether you're in business, or whether you're in STEM. So part of what we have done at Foothill recently, and now that is being crossed over with collaboration with De Anza College, is we formed an AI learning community. It started with just a few people, me and about 3 other people, and it quickly grew to a very large group, which now houses staff, student, faculty, administrators, folks from different colleges, folks from the community. And so we're really trying to open this landscape and have these conversations about how is AI going to affect education? What are teachers seeing in the classroom? There's such a wide range of philosophies from a teaching perspective, and part of our goal is trying to come up with guidance to give to faculty to say, you know, should that really be considered cheating, for instance, in a certain circumstance? Did you communicate on an assignment that AI was or was not allowed? How can we leverage AI to enhance the learning for the students and come up with new creative opportunities for learning? I'm also involved a lot with the technology committee at the campus, and so I'm kind of intertwined with a lot of things, but part of the view that I have is that this crosses so many different disciplines that we need to be talking to everyone about this, not just from, say, a computer science lens. So I'm really privileged to be here. I appreciate the invite, and I'll look forward to this conversation as we go through.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lippy Bismail, CEO and founder of Kavi AI. And I think, like me, you might be wondering what I'm doing here. I'll give you maybe a little background which might explain that. Prior to starting Kavya, I was SVP of Comcast for devices software, where I ran a team of 2,000 people, built the technology called RDK, which is used across all devices by Comcast, Sky in Europe, and several other partners. So it's almost 100 million devices running a software stack. And I had like a pretty good career, like going on, like thinking about like what was the next step, and then I quit all of that. I just I quit and decided to kind of start my own company. And the only reason why I had the courage to do that, like I had a stable job, and I had like all of that. The reason why I decided to do all of that is the art of what is possible with AI. Without AI, I would not have quit that job and start this. So I think the product that we are building is also kind of helping accelerate that thing. Like the fact that someone could build a company and to kind of build like products, look at the problems where they're feeling pain in any aspect, and build solutions real fast, like using latest set of technology, that is, I think, like the promise of what you get. I know that a lot of people are really worried about what AI would do to jobs and all of that, but this also enables like a different kind of, it brings in a different set of energy and different set of possibilities. So I'm here to kind of touch upon and talk about this.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to dive right in with one of the big questions. And even if we're all from different backgrounds, one of the things that's common is we've all been through the education system. And I think right now students are really questioning, especially with the rise of generative AI, what is the purpose of education? Like, what am I supposed to be getting out of it? What am I supposed to be learning? How is this going to benefit me, like financially, or also just philosophically, psychologically? So to start with a big question, what do you think is the purpose of education, and how does your work in AI support that purpose? And I guess we'll start here, but if you want to, whenever you want to jump in, feel free to do so.
Okay. That's a big question. And I, having spent a decade in the University of California system, in back-end administration, am kind of known as the Michael Bay of education. Not thinking that we need to stop it, but that we need to actually start all over again, right? And so we're in this time of like post-disciplinary worlds, right? And so the math professor, I think, talked about it the best. Things are crossing over in a big way. The biggest programming language right now is English. So I call this time revenge of the English majors. Like, I'm also a humanities major, so I'm very excited about that, right? And I've spent all my career in tech. Let me tell you, this is the time where we need to be looking at our humanity kind of as big problems or big things that we want to do together or big points of purpose. And I think there's still a role for education, so don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot to be done for critical thinking. I think there's a lot to be done for us actually learning how to relate to one another. A lot of people talk about AI as being reflective of our humanity. I'm like, well, but you and I don't even agree on what the truth is. Like, how can we actually talk about this if we can't have those conversations? And so I think there's actually just a new era of education that needs to happen in this age of AI. And that education needs to really take into each and every one of us holistically, and us as a community, and us as human beings.
Sure. So I was listening to two colleagues recently talk about this at Stanford, and one of them kind of framed it really well in a fascinating perspective of the relationship of, or the concepts of productivity versus skills. And so right now you're seeing the potential of a significant productivity uptick. And if you used ChatGPT, right, you know how to use it when you're in mindful hallucination, your productivity can probably go up significantly. But what are your skills still? And that's a really important question, and it gets into this other area. If you think about it, let's talk about the same colleague in that conversation was talking about his programming course. And in his programming course, he doesn't actually, he's downgraded the rating of how he used to grade this. So for the coding purposes, that's actually gone down in how he rates that. Why? Because AI writes really good code. Or, I mean, it can be quite useful in that space. But what he's actually done is upgraded the understanding of the algorithm. Why is it coming to some of these decisions and what's happening? Through that relationship, you're actually looking at the skills capability versus the productivity capability and what that means. That said, it still creates a degree of uncertainty into this environment if you are starting out right now. What does that mean for you, particularly if you're coming to a community college? Because maybe you're coming here to learn how to code for the purposes of being a programmer, and you don't need to go directly to a four-year institution, that this is a good enough launch pad. That might come into question right now if you're looking at it from just that productivity side and not the skill side of what you can get from there. And the other part of this equation is what's the role of academia itself in AI? And this is actually one of my biggest areas that I work on, which is public sector AI. And what you see in 2014 is this historically academic field starts to fall behind, and it falls behind because of compute resources and the tools that are available or needed to be able to do this. And so while that may not be so much of an initial challenge in teaching environments like the community college, when those who want to transfer go on to the research university, is the research university equipped and prepared to be able to teach the next generation how to even use this technology in the first place? And that window is actually slipping away more and more. And it's becoming a significant challenge. One, so much that even a university as far along in AI as Stanford, it begs the question, does frontier AI belong in the university environment in the first place? I would argue, in fact, it not only does it belong there, it must be there, because we need to be able to teach the next generation how to be AI leaders in this space. And at the same time, the breakthroughs that will come from academia will not mirror the breakthroughs that will come from industry, which have a completely different perspective. We can talk about that later, if anyone's interested.
I think that the purpose of education, I would sum it up in there are two core purposes. I think that one of the purposes of education is to instill those kind of core competencies, critical thinking, communication, also things like math and reading. And the other purpose is to identify what skills or passions each individual has that they should be nurturing so that they can be successful and contribute to society. And when I think about AI's role in that conversation, I think that for that first issue, or for the first part of instilling those core competencies and skills, I think that AI is making us realize that a lot of the curriculum that we have now doesn't necessarily instill those core skills in a way that wouldn't make someone be replaceable by AI, if that makes sense. So part of, I think, what we're going to see a big shift is that as AI continues to, for example, eat up the entry-level and internship opportunities for young people, how are we building core skills in the higher learning journey that make it so that they have that skill agility and that resilience so that they can build out a career pathway and not be replaced by AI. And then that second purpose of identifying that passion or that skill that really makes an individual unique and helps them thrive, I think that there's so much opportunity with AI in doing that. There are so many personalized learning pathways that can be explored and so many individualized resources. But my big concern is that when we're thinking about implementing those resources, we don't always start with a basic question of how much digital and AI literacy do people start with. And that's something that really varies. Even in the Bay Area, I was speaking to someone who's the founder of Digital Nest, a really exceptional organization trying to help Latina youth in the Bay improve professional development skills and technical skills. And a point he was making is even within the Bay, if you move from the heart of Silicon Valley outwards, there are really, really wide gaps in terms of the basic digital literacy that students have. So I think that's kind of part of the work that our media is trying to do is assess the environment, because I don't think we have that visibility to start with, and then think about, what is the starting point? What are the resources that would best serve students?
I want to add just a follow to bring the both into, because I think where this is heading, or what I'm hearing, is another piece of this question is also like, what are the skills going to be, or what are the necessary skills that students need to have entering this new AI-enabled workforce? And then another part of that is how can institutions ready themselves to provide those skills for students?
Which one's on? Yeah, kind of going into that, a big part for me, the purpose, right, and the changing landscape is that digital divide. The equity aspect is always something that we need to be conscientious of. And with AI, I feel like it's just another tool, right? There's always been tools invented to enhance our learning. A calculator was invented one day and changed the whole game. Then it was a computer. Now we're here at AI. There's always going to be folks out there that don't have access to the tools, that have a disadvantage versus someone who had access to those tools from a very early age and have that advantage. So for me, the problem is how can we bridge that gap in the educational setting and give all students the opportunity to learn how to use a tool to enhance their learning. Because, go back to the curriculum, maybe our curriculum isn't where it needs to be at to adapt to AI, but I'll just take a class for instance, you look at some random course outline or record, a lot of classes now have outcomes that involve using graphical software. You need to be able to know how to use graphical software, right? So that was not there before graphical softwares were available. Now AI is readily available for the public, so is that going to now become part of our learning outcomes at some point? I believe so, and I believe that if we can get students to learn how to use the tools efficiently, then it is going to enhance that learning. And a couple of the colleagues over here mentioned, it's that critical thinking, right? We need a human to critically think. We need to understand when some AI spits out some stuff to you, which oftentimes if you use the ChatGPT, it's way more information than you need, right? So what part of that information is it that you actually need, that you're looking for, or is it some answer to some physics problem? Do you even understand what the answer means conceptually, right? Because that's what's really important, to then go on to the next step and then ask the next question, right? Which eventually trying to solve a problem. So I think education is at this inflection point right now where we need to figure out how we make those opportunities possible and give all the students the opportunity to use this tool as an enhancement for their learning and for the good of the world.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in order to be effective with AI, you need to have a good understanding of how world works, what makes the world tick. You may not know what happened, you may not need to learn explicitly what happened on the day of French Revolution, but you need to know like what kind of triggered it. So you need to have like a large understanding of general areas of human knowledge, so that now you can effectively engage with AI. Like, how I use AI is as I'm like walking, I'm kind of thinking about like a particular problem, and then I think of like maybe this is the approach that I should take, right? And I just like stop at the next bench and bring up my phone and have my Claude session, and then I talk to Claude about like, okay, I'm thinking about this, like what do you think? And now I started a session with Claude, and then eventually I connect it back to my code base and say like, how do I go about solving the problem? But all of that was possible was because I have this general understanding of what is possible, right? And then I know how to engage with AI to now further develop that, right? So this, to me, is kind of when cars came on, like you had people with skills on riding horses, you now need to learn how to drive, right? So this is kind of like a transfer of your basic knowledge and applying that using a new set of tools to get to be more effective.
Wonderful, thank you. That was really inspiring. I like the discussion of like critical thinking. As someone who teaches critical thinking, I'm definitely in agreement. And also critical thinking about knowing when to use the right tool. And this is something that I've been thinking on during the summit is we've been hearing a lot about the shiny new tool is like chatbots, right? Personalized chatbots, which I think are great. I'm a huge proponent of personalized learning. But as somebody who also, like my research is on political polarization, particularly through social media, I'm concerned about the ways that our realities get kind of like further and further like personalized such that there's not that much communication across like, you know, people who think differently from you. So I'm curious, like how can we use AI to improve communication? And this kind of goes to what I think Russell was saying about productivity versus skills. Like generative AI is a very productive communicator. It generates a lot of text. But the skills of communication are different, right? It's not just generating a lot of words. So how can we use AI to improve communication, especially, you know, if we're talking about chatbots between faculty and students, but I think, you know, between, you know, faculty and administrators, you know, students and administrators, you know, all the different, you know, parts of the education system. I don't know who wants to tackle that first. There's a lot of mics, so hot potato.
I'll say a couple things on this. First, I do think it's really important too that we understand, and this isn't nothing against the question itself, but I do think when we're talking about AI, that we are very singularly focused a little bit too much on the chatbot or the large language model itself right now. And I do have a bit of concern about that because, one, let's put it this way, I live in San Francisco. When I drive around, all I see are all these AI signs, this AI in here or whatever, because it needs to be in everything. But that as a myopic view towards specifically the language model, as that's going to be the only part of AI in our lives, when in fact right now it's quite limited in comparison to the larger parts of AI in our lives overall. I could just say AI in healthcare alone will have such fundamental, significant transformations for us. So I just want to make that known about the scientific discovery and all these other things, and I can come back to this if anyone's interested during Q&A. But in terms of communication with ourselves, there are a lot of interesting things that I think we could use these chatbots or tools to help, and I think it was slightly alluded over here. For me, I actually find it to be, imagine you're in a room by yourself coming up with an idea, versus imagine you're in the room with 2 other people on a whiteboard and all of the ideas that can come up for that. So for me, it can be a really great way for idea generation. And you can find ways of understanding different perspectives and be able to now, therefore, more effectively communicate with people and meet people where they're at from different perspectives. So it could be a tool that can be used to be able to help a little bit more on the communication side of things and can be applied. I do have concern about the social media concerns and the political issues that can come from this. And that's a fairly significant problem because we are entering a phase right now of where generative AI will create such exquisite, real, I say this about particularly deepfakes, it has a lot about speed, sophistication, and scale. You can do it quickly, you can do it it can look extraordinarily real to almost absolutely perfect, and you can do a lot of it. And that can create an environment of where the questioning of what is true around us starts to become an issue. There's these concepts like the liar's dividend or some of these things they might even be seeing applied today. So from a communications perspective, you have to consider it as where you can use it as a tool and be able to extrapolate the most out of it, but at the same time be mindful of the challenges that it can have.
I think that, AI could be so useful for, personal communication, improving those skills, interacting with chatbots about, how would I ask this question? How would I interact with my teacher? But the part of this that my brain goes to more is also just that AI as a concept and as a challenge for the learning community is such an incredible opportunity for students and faculty and TAs and staff to engage in a dialogue like they haven't been able to. A session that we hosted last year at UC Santa Barbara, can you tell I went to school there? A session we hosted at UC Santa Barbara was with students, faculty, librarians, and staff. And one of the big takeaways, aside from the insight that we drew out specifically about ChatGPT and AI, was that we had students coming up to us saying, I've never gotten to sit face-to-face with a professor and a librarian and engage with them like that. And that's something that I feel like could help me grow as an individual. That's a conversation that I want to be part of. On the flip side, we had members of faculty coming up to us saying, I didn't know my students could like wax poetic about these kind of topics like that, So I think AI as a challenge for higher learning presents this really incredible opportunity for us to open up dialogue, create those spaces so that people can be communicating across learning levels. And yeah, I think that would benefit all of education in ways that extend past AI.
What comes to my mind when you ask that question, Chessa, is the communication aspect with the new generation of kids. How many times have I tried to call someone in the past couple of years and they say, why just text me? right? And so the technology landscape has changed the way we communicate with each other in general. I mean, even going back to the rotary phone, right? And so when you talk about AI, that's a tough question. How can it improve our communication? It's not like I'm gonna get on a chatbot and say, hey, text this person or something like that, right? But using it as a tool again, in a collaborative situation, we need that human-to-human interaction, in my opinion. You need to be in a setting, us as humans, not talking to each other. We saw how COVID affected us all, right? Is that the world that we want to live in? No, we need that human-human interaction. And if you are in a setting with a group and you're trying to accomplish a goal, then, like I was saying earlier, we now have this tool to throw in our thoughts and come up with things that we might not have thought of. And so I think it really comes down to the collaboration aspect when we're trying to come up with new ideas, that it's now something we can take advantage of, and our progress is going to increase rapidly if we use it the right way, in my opinion.
So I do think that in the communication is going to be a key aspect which we need to figure out how to emphasize. Because humanities is going to be one skill that, or one capability, or one area that we really need to, where we can distinguish between people and AI. This is an area where I think that we need to get more focus, because that is going to be like, as teachers, because that is one area which is going to make a big difference in someone who's going to succeed in the future. Earlier, it were like the math and the computer skills and all of that. Those things are still really valid, but humanities would take an extra dimension now, because chess, computers start playing chess and start teaching humans a long time ago, right? But no one watches computers playing chess. Like people still watch people playing chess, like mainly because it is people. We can relate to them. Like so, similarly, it is true that we would still have a lot of AI-based interaction, customer service agents, like a lot of AI-based things. But still, there might be like a point of time where people want to like actually talk to people, like people want to interact with people. So there, like what element of people is going to make a difference is the ability to relate and chat with people, ask people, like what I say,
I love this question because I think a lot about this kind of stuff, and one thing that I've seen AI be actually really great with is helping with people that have different learning styles or different learning labeled, right? So especially in the creative space, someone who maybe doesn't have the ability to visualize things, or somebody who doesn't have the ability to communicate in a clear way, they can actually leverage AI to start to help them bridge the gap to talk to other people in a way that they didn't feel like they could before. And so that's really cool for me. I've seen a lot of tools that are starting to be developed around the kind of note-taking, like AI note-taking, I'm sure you've all seen that, but that are starting to embed things like communication style analysis and sentiment analysis of the people that are talking in the room, and I think that can help us collectively. Like if we start to have that offloaded, not to an individual who will not have an unbiased opinion, but something that can actually help us think about how might we communicate together, how might we move together as a unit. That's really, really cool for me. And then last, I'll just say that there's one of my favorite novels is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and there's this whole thing about an empathy gun. Do we know about this, like the empathy ray? And so we think about, like, is there a way that we could use AI to actually understand the other person's perspective that we're sitting in the room with? And how might that facilitate that idea of an empathy gun? Like, and then I can have better empathy if I understand where your perspective is coming from. And if that's not something that we have to lay on the table, because we're kind of bad at that as humans, but something that actually I'm presented with. So.
Thank you. That was so great. And I wish I had time for more questions because I have a lot to ask, but I also want to leave time for the audience to ask questions. But I know we've heard a lot of really great things already, just some of the ways that we can look at these tools critically and ways that they can improve collaboration, but also increase our different skills that we might not have had before. So I'd like to invite anybody who would want to ask the panelists a question. All right, I see some hands up.
Hi, my name is Riza Rasool. I'm chair of a non-profit AI lab. Question, are we going through an era of intellectual laziness where rather than trying to figure out how to solve a problem, we're simply relying on historical data, throwing it into a machine in order to create a model? Like the large language models, can they be distilled down to be smaller and maybe have some sort of really deterministic set of rules? Oh, what could they be? They could be grammar, syntax, a vocabulary, instead of just saying, hey, throwing your hands up in the air, we don't know how to analyze this, and just let the data solve the problem.
I have to say, I actually think quite the opposite. I do not think we're entering a phase of intellectual laziness. I think the calculator was mentioned. The calculator did not make us stop doing math, it helped us do better math. And so it's this whole area of unrealized opportunity. Coming back to my point on large language models, or language models in general, whether small or large, if we keep focusing on that as the general point of AI, we will get very lost in what will come. So think about protein folding right now, the AlphaFold model from DeepMind that actually is going to help us map out proteins in a much more effective way and allow for targeted drug discovery. The you're going to start, AI is a cross-cutting technology, and it affects all of these different areas. And so if we think of scientific discovery, and we look at, for example, nuclear fusion, first off, you're going to hear a bunch of, I think in the coming years, a lot of scientific breakthroughs. And you're going to refer to it by the domain it existed, but it would not have happened if it didn't have the support of AI and ML techniques applied. So if you look at the nuclear fusion breakthrough from last year that the US had, that wouldn't have happened if you didn't have AI and ML techniques applied. So the point here is I think quite the opposite, that we're not going to be intellectually lazy. We now have been supported, and we're going to have actually intellectual steroids in a way, and being able to think more specifically in these unique domains and unlock parts of humanity, parts of breakthroughs for humanity to improve the human condition in many ways that we would have never considered or even thought possible within our realm because it was so far out of reach. The years it took to map out a protein could be, one protein could be someone's entire dissertation, a doctoral experience. And now they're being mapped out like crazy, and that will make a huge difference for humanity.
Yes, you're here to all of that. I think one of the things that I think about a lot is the true nature of humanity and what we're actually here to do. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions that's come out of the Industrial Revolution is that we're here to work. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. We may be here to connect and love and empathize and do things that computers cannot do. And so I also agree that this is not a time of intellectual laziness. I actually think there is a great scientist, Dr. Vivian Bing, who talks about the information exploration paradox, right? So the more information we have at hand, the less likely we are to explore, but exploration is what gets us to the next thing and the next discovery, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe going back to your first question, one of the things we should be thinking about when we're thinking about education is how we navigate that paradox, right? So how we make sure that information can be served to you in a way that takes away the things that you don't actually need to be doing, but gives you room to actually explore so that we can do the things like protein folding that will actually change our world.
I actually am going to share a view that slightly differs, but I think But I think it might be because I'm thinking about this specifically in the context of the individual learner. And I'll bring in for my students, or for my interviews with students, there's one point that stood out to me when you were asking the question that came to mind, which is, I was talking with this freshman, she was incredibly bright, and she said, when I interact with ChatGPT, I feel like I'm turning my brain off. And it's really easy to do that. And I think part of the reason I'm so concerned about that issue is that the disruptions that AI is making to learning are not happening in a vacuum. They're happening alongside students who have just come out of a pandemic, who are stunted in some ways because of that. It's in a context of young people who are constantly overwhelmed by information because of the internet and having grown up with social media. So I really, and honestly, I also say this as a young person who has had to take really active steps to make sure that I don't feel like I'm losing my ability to think critically and to, you know, grow both as a learner, as a worker, and as a human in ways that aren't being funneled in a specific direction by the technology that I'm interacting with, if that makes sense. So I really do have that concern. I wish I had an answer for what we could do about it, but I think right now my point would just be that we need to think about all the factors that are impacting young people in their learning journeys, and especially as they transition into career. Because also when I look around at folks that are in my kind of age range, there's a really intense apathy and a confusion, and I think a loss of direction. And I think we need to ask, you know, what role could AI play in solving that, but also what might it be doing right now to exacerbate some of the issues?
So a couple of things. First, let's just go into the hitchhiker's guide. Just ask the AI what the meaning of life is, right? you know the answer. It's 42, right? So that wasn't the answer we were expecting, but the interpretation of that answer can be taken as, all right, it's 42. I knew it all along. Or clearly that was wrong, right? So when we talk about intellectual laziness, there are going to be students right now that are trying to learn and don't know an answer to something and are sitting at their desk at home and say, let's just ask the AI. The AI chatbot in particular, right, it will spit out a bunch of stuff, and probably this will improve with time, right? But right now, a lot of that information is not even correct information or is not relevant information. So the era of intellectual laziness, I think of WALL-E, when all the people are just living. They're living and just eating, and that's their life, right? I don't think we're going in that direction, but it does provide a challenge to students learning when they don't have the guidance to use the tool in an effective way. So I think a big part of where we need to go in education is really be guiding and helping and educating the students on how to use these tools effectively and ethically, right? And not, you know, putting their data at risk and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of WALL-E just sitting there. I don't think that's going to happen, because mainly because there is still going to be competitive forces. There is still going to be the desire to succeed. There is still going to be a lot of human desires which are going to drive us forward. Like, what that means is, it is true that, like as Tara said, like this is an opportunity. If you want to be lazy, like you can still kind of survive by making use of it. Like, it is true, but there also is going to be people on the other side, like using this to move things forward, move the needle forward so fast that like falling back may not be that much of an attractive option, which would mean that, like, now, just like any other tool, like calculator, like change things, there would be a bunch of people who now are like forced to learn how to effectively use it and use this to move forward, like move themselves, their position, their social positions, all of that move forward. So there would be other incentives to figure out like how to go to the next level of info and how to the next level of usage and make use of it. I think one thing about curriculum and homeworks and all of that. There was a lot of discussion about like what if students are using AI. I think that eventually it should get to a point where you expect students to use AI and ask them, give them challenges where they have to use AI. Like they can't solve it without using AI. Give them challenges where they have to use AI, but still now apply their kind of understanding of the world on top of it in order to get to the solution.
Thank you. And also to remember that our students are already using AI. If they do a Google search, they're using AI. I know that there are more hands and more questions, but I think we're over time. But because we had such an amazing panel, diversity of perspectives, because there are a diversity of AI tools out there.